I'm not entirely sure how that affects the situation, except to punish local day trippers or others who may not live on the beach and wish to park in a public parking lot. I'm also, yeah, it's terribly unfortunate, but absolutely understandable that we're missing the mayor at this time, simply because I like his insights. He's a special relationship, and he always maintains it with the county commission, and I would have loved to have a feel of what his feelings were on that, and what repercussions are for the same argument we were confronted with before about, for future issues, if the county remains open for everything and we shut down our beaches, the calls will be full, etc. And I'm not saying shut down our beaches, shut down the public parking, which I concurred with at the outset of this unpleasantness, quite frankly. So my question is, and that's just a frame of discussion all the way, is what is it we want to accomplish exactly by doing this? And then I think we can sort of work backwards from, all right, if that's the goal, then how do we effectuate that goal?
Well, if I can, what's your opinion on that? I mean,
just a discussion.
Simply, it would reduce the numbers of people that are on the beach. If I recognise that there are hotels, as Ms. Smith suggested, are fully booked, so we're not closing the beaches as such. I just think it reduces the number of people that enter our beaches, and it also allows us to better control the number of beaches and people that are on the beaches. So it's really a numbers problem. I think if we do this, we will reduce the number of visitors coming to our island, reduce the number of people coming to our beaches. I don't believe they're going to come to the island just to go to our restaurants. I believe they will come to the island because they want to go on the beaches. So I think it will reduce the number of people that come to our island for a short period of time, of 7 or 8 days. That's why. So it's really a numbers problem. And I'm, it is a tough job being up here. It really is. But one of the things that in my 16 years on council is necessary to do is to listen to those people that put me in office, to listen to them and try to understand what they're telling me. The people that put me in office are telling me that please try and limit the number of people that are on our beaches. And I'm responding to that. Now, for a variety of reasons, we may believe this is not good, right, or fair, but I'm responding to the needs of our citizens. The put me in office says, look, it is going to be a difficult weekend. There's going to be a large number of people coming from the West Coast and other places to this island. Please, will you try and see if we can minimize the effect of these people? That is what I'm trying to do. I'm listening to the citizens of this island. Once again, repeating myself. I'm listening to people that live on this island, that make this island their home, and this is what I'm hearing from them. So it's really a numbers problem. It's trying to reduce the numbers of people coming onto our island and getting onto our beaches. And we may not all like what we're trying to do, but it does satisfy the needs of what I consider to be the majority of the citizens, those people who live on our island.
Vice Mayor, if I may, I too am glad that we're having this conversation because I think had we not had this conversation, we would have been not carrying out our responsibilities. So I'm glad, as I spoke earlier, I'm glad that City Attorney opined so that I knew that we were on firm ground there from a legal standpoint as far as notice goes and such. As I look at this issue, I'm going to try to offer up some comments that maybe I haven't heard already. And although I did hear this, I want to emphasize that we are a sanctuary island. We do strive to be I would not be too concerned about this because I think the steps and measures that we have in place are adequate for normal times. And as we've all stated and we've heard from others, we are in unprecedented times dealing with this COVID crisis, how we got into this conversation in the first place. Without being too much more long-winded, I think that we do require some additional steps to manage beach load for this holiday weekend. I will go on the record also as saying that I'm not convinced that we need to have it as long a period of time. I think the peak time that we're dealing with is the 4th of July weekend, not necessarily. I'll also go on record saying that by using the tool, the management tool we have available to us that we've used in the past, is by utilizing those public parking areas that we control on Saturday. And what we can do then is limit the number of folks that are going to end up on our beaches. We've already seen some environmental damage to what's taking place, and I'd like to, as best as possible, minimize the additional damage that might occur because of additional loads on our beaches. With the announced closures on the East Coast and communities, I think it is going to put some additional pressure on our beaches. I would suggest that we consider a shorter time period and where we're most at risk. The other thing that I heard loud and clear decisions that we were denying residents of Lee County the ability. And I think if we were to allow those beach parking permits, those permit holders, to utilize those other areas, I think that would be an appropriate discussion for us to have today too.
Okay, trying to listen to what you said, I would accept part of the motion which the attorney tells me I can't make, some needs to make, that we should, I'll be willing to accept you that I think you said
I didn't say the 7th. I wanted to focus on that peak period.
Okay, I would
and I think we need to decide what that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I objection. I want to make it very clear for everybody that we are not closing the beaches. We're not closing the beaches. We're closing beach parking. And we're doing this to try and prevent the numbers of people that congregate on our beaches. And you're right. I'm doing this because of the environmental damage. And we have found over the last weeks, when we began to open up the beaches, the amount of litter and garbage which is left on the beaches, I think that will be enhanced over this weekend. So I'm need to change my view on what it was to align with yours, Mr. Johnson.
All right, well, I'm just looking at some dates as we're discussing. So we, I have my calendar in front of me, and the dates of Friday is the 3rd and Monday is the 6th. Friday is the 3rd and Monday is the 6th. I believe the East Coast beaches are closed from the 3rd to the 7th, which is a Tuesday. The peak period probably would be the Friday through the Monday. Just for discussion, if it was council's pleasure.
Why don't you make a motion with those dates for the closure of beaches for a short period of time?
Excuse me, if we've got a motion on the table, or you need to do an amendment? Pardon me?
I've been told by the attorney that someone else needs to make.
So the motion was withdrawn?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm asking Ms. Smith if she would entertain a motion with the dates that she suggested.
Well, let me ask first, would you like to have further conversation, or would you, okay, because I believe Jason is looking, and I am ready to make a motion on that.
And I can leave this right to the motion. Just to keep it clean.
Okay.
Councilwoman Smith, sorry to interrupt. Just before you make the motion, I just have a couple more questions, if you may.
Otherwise, John, I'm going to open it for public comment, so.
I just wanted to be clear, is it only paid beach parking that you're talking about? Okay.
That was going to be part of my motion, the city, paid beach parking
Okay. Thank you.
lots. And I see the city manager standing up with a question. So I want to make sure that, so.
Thank you, Councilwoman Smith. And so that would not include, for instance, the Sanibel grant, or the fishing pier. Is that correct?
Well, I'm glad you.
It would include, yes.
Yeah, that's not considered parking. And
Thank you for bringing that forward, because I think that's a very important consideration, because I think that the traffic to the boat ramp would be quite extensive as well.
And one of the things we learned, like all of this, there's no playbook, there's lessons learned. One of the things we learned when we did the last closing was, first, just a couple facts to put out there. Not advocating either side, just a couple facts. One, just to remind everyone, we have an interlocal agreement with the county where we have 2 beaches that are actually owned by the county that we manage. And I think it's the first or second sentence of that interlocal says, whatever the county policy for beaches are at that time is in place.
Understood.
So just make sure everybody listening understands. So that's in place. Number 2, we have beach parking at different types of lots. We have the paid lots. An example of that would be Lighthouse. There you can have the beach parking permit if you're a resident, but also you can put money in the meters. We have lots like the end of Fulber, the end of Narita, a number of lots that are by permit only. There is no meter there. And to get a permit, you have to either have an A permit or a B permit. Since COVID has hit, we've reopened selling A permits. If you have a B permit, your B permit is still in effect October 1st. But we have not restarted selling B permits just because of the capacity with our layoffs of not having that. Then we did find some locations, once we closed, where people were going, and the best example of those would be the end of Bailey Road, the end of Dixie Beach, where people were saying, I'll take the fine and I'll park there anyway, because I'm already in the car, I've got the kids, we got the sand buckets, give me the fine. And so we did some additional closure at some hot spots that were getting excessive demand, even though they normally would have had a beach sticker, but we had people who were willing to just take the fine in the stead. Subsequent to that, council increased as an emergency the fine for illegal parking. And once that was in place, and we have it widely publicized, we saw a significant decrease in the number of illegal parking at those locations. Because of, as ugly as the signs are, we do have them very widely posted and distributed. I just want to make sure we all have those facts. So it's not just, so when we refer to paid beach parking, that would be your Lighthouse, your Algiers. It does not include the boat ramp. And then, of course, as council may recall, when we had the boat ramp close to everyone, Sanibel residents who do not live directly on the water, but boat owners and have purchased an A sticker, were very vocal in their ability, and they felt their equal opportunity to vote. They had relied on their A sticker for access.
So, City Manager, you understand the intent of what we're trying to do?
Yes, sir, and I'm just saying.
I understand that.
Right,
But
and we
also-
had that intent the last time. It's just that as we
I'm
went
just
through
trying-
these steps, we.
So I want to make sure the language does fulfill your request here, to be sure that we are clear in what it is we do. But it is in my intention, or our intention, my intention, to include the paid parking on the beaches and help us with the language of what that is. I think you understand what the intent is.
I'll defer the council member. Let's start.
If I may, because I think Council Member Johnson brought up a very good point. We have B stickers, and those are non-resident stickers. B and B. So might be difficult logistically. Would it be an alternative to say those with any A or B stickers in the appropriate lots? Because these are allowing the B stickers to come onto them.
Which took every bit of our resources when we were not in a holiday weekend.
Okay.
When we were closed. If we were able to do just the full burst and arenas, those, if we tried to staff and tried to sort out at a beach as large as a lighthouse around here, and tried, we would not have sufficient staff for this weekend to be able to man it and only allow in the A's and B's at those. The way we did it during the closure was initially when everything closed, and we did open some select lots that had permits. But we designated the pay from the park. You would have to have an attendant there, and you would have to have, even being closed, it is a very difficult thing to enforce this on top of everything else on the.
So I'm really asking Cindy if you could guide us on what is appropriate based upon the staff we've got available. You understand the intent?
And I would suggest that we close down the same beaches that we did before. The fishing pier has a beach access area also. It's just a normal pier, but it is a beach. And same with the boat ramp. The boat ramp has a beach access as well. So it would be the boat ramp, the pier, lighthouse, and then all the other paid parking except for Bowman's and Turner. Turner's really not our jurisdiction, but we manage it.
So that I think would be a step in the right direction to do that.
We have had great legislation. If we could bring that back up, because it did allow the AC stickers at the boat ramp, the residents to be able to launch their boats. I do recall that was open and there was an attendant there that was checking. I believe that was the one area that did have an attendant. Can we pull back the legislation that we had in place previously? Would that simplify?
Yes.
So we can, Councilwoman Smith, it ended up, as the city manager said, kind of piecemeal. We did one thing and we had to make a few adjustments to address it, to get it the way that ultimately everyone wanted it. But the one amendment was a proclamation dated March 22nd, and it provided, as you just said, at the city boat ramp parking lot to allow AC and A permit holders to access the facility.
I'm trying to pull that finished proclamation because if we don't need to reinvent the wheel, then that would probably serve us best, because I think the end result will be the same as what we had in place at that time.
So what we have, Councilwoman Smith, is in Proclamation Resolution 20-14. There is a list of appended to it from Exhibit A through Exhibit I, all the different proclamations that the mayor made on his own, and that was a ratification, if you will, by council of those different acts. And so it isn't clean; it's all contained within this proclamation resolution 20-014, but they are the different ways that parking has been addressed are appended in different exhibits. So we would need to make something clean regardless. We can pull it all from this, but it's, so for instance, Exhibit A addresses closure of beach parking at Bowman's, Blind Pass, Lighthouse, and Fishing Pier. Exhibit D addresses the proclamation that ordered closure of the city boat ramps and the city pier. Then Exhibit F, by proclamation dated March 22nd, closure of beach parking at the New Dixie Beach Road and Bailey Beach Road. Exhibit G attached addresses closure of boat ramp parking lot, but allowing AC and A permit holders to access it. And then Exhibit H to that or disclosure of beach parking and determination of beach road, except as to acres where suddenly all the information is contained within 20-014, but it's not clean or we could copy paste it.
But my question to you, can we craft some legislation or proclamation which will adhere to what the police chief is looking for and the city manager looking for, which is as the intent of what we're trying to accomplish.
Vice Mayor, I can absolutely write whatever council ultimately want to direct us to do. Absolutely. The problem is, I think, the chief has explained is a little bit different than what, Councilman Smith has described. And once there's a consensus, certainly we can write out.
Try not to make it too complicated.
Well, and that's, and I'm,
Don't make it too
and I'm not to, I just wanted to, and I think this is more for discussion right now, as we're having this discussion right now. I'm not really prepared to say what a motion will be. I did want to have the discussion, as Council Member Johnson did talk about the B parking. However, the logistics of that might be too difficult. And I think if we're looking at a very short window, like other places are, then the simpler that we have this, the better. I think that we would like to see the allowance of the boat ramp parking for AC for those that boat. I think that's an important aspect.
We accommodated that before. I think it was an oversight, and then we changed it, and we staffed that. We have in the past. That's not a problem.
It's not a problem.
Not the.
I certainly don't want to put a undue burden on the police department where they find themselves that they just absolutely cannot handle it.
Right.
But I will say I do want to impose upon you, Chief, and your officers, that we go up to that point so that we can. I think, we talked about intent, and I think. Councilwoman Smith, I think you're exactly right. I think we're not exactly sure what the intent is. So I do encourage us, we have a full conversation about this so we can be clear of our intent so that city attorney can draft the proper legislation. Because I know I've left the room sometimes thinking that was my intent, but I don't know that it got out and got into the legislation. So rather than trying to wind this back, I'd like to do it once and I'd like to do it right if we can. Just for the record, and my intent was to allow as much flexibility as we can with the parking areas, the beach, and I want to hesitate using the beach parking areas because I know that's where it got us with the boat ramp, and I don't want to go back there again. With the parking areas so that we can manage the crowds on the beaches, but at the same time give as much availability as we can to the folks that live here and have have purchased permits to be in those parking areas. So that's my intent. I think we need to have some additional language with regard to, and Chief and City Manager, I'll rely on you to if I push you too far to indicate that and just say you're putting me in a position that's untenable, and I don't want to do that. But I do want to, for a very short period of time, I do want you to recognize that I'm going to ask you for supreme effort in this parking for the weekend.
I do just want to remind council, and again, I believe it was an unintended consequence that we experienced over Memorial Day. When we have the situation where Bowman's is open and Captiva is open and all of our other beaches are closed, what we do see is illegal parking in residential neighborhoods, at condos, and I've sent you police reports.
Commercial areas.
And commercial areas, which then also pulls police resources to those areas. So I just want to make certain everybody understands, once Bowman fills, when Bowman's the only beach, again, I'm not advocating, it's your policy decision. I just want to make sure we all remember this from that short time ago, Memorial Day weekend, that once Bowman's filled, those cars often look for alternative parking on Sanibel. We do our best to enforce it, but our experience has been, we didn't experience as much of that once the other beaches then were reopened. But once a family's here and they're in their vehicle and they're intending to go to the beach, we find that they often find a place to park and go to the beach.
Started this discussion based on the underlying question which all leaders, governments should consider: what are we trying to accomplish? What is our intent? How do we execute upon that? And the answer to that question, in a general sense, it's been provided today, is that we want to reduce the numbers of people on the beach to reduce the spread of COVID-19 on the island, which in and of itself is not a bad intent at all. In fact, it's the appropriate intent to try and slow the spread of COVID-19. However, that being said, it appears that the net result, if I think about this anecdotally, the net result is that we are going to exclude day trippers who come here for the day, go directly to the beach, stay on the beach, don't interact with citizens, get back in their car and drive off the island, and that's the end of that. On the other hand, what we're going to do is allow people from out of town who've traveled here for a weekend to come and stay all over the island, who are definitely going to interact with citizens. They're going to go to restaurants, they're going to go to shops, they're going to go to civic attractions, and they're going to be all over the bike paths. With that anecdotal observation, at least in my opinion, what are we accomplishing apart from making people feel good, but not actually accomplishing the goal that should make them feel good? And I just want that borne out for consideration if you think about it as ourselves, and as was artfully put, with the bucket and spade in the car. I know what all of us would do if we were somewhere else. We'd find a spot to park and weasel our way out for nothing else not to be shouted at all the way home by the kids. So I take that into account when I talk about what is the real politic of what we're trying to accomplish here, and the net effect. If we don't want people interacting with citizens to spread it, then why are we stopping the people who aren't going to interact with citizens? Just an observation for discussion purposes.
My question to you, sir, is why did we do it last time? Why did we close the beach parking last time?
Oh, listen, I was fully in support of closing the beach last time.
Why did we do it? What reason?
We did it because that was, I'm sorry, if you want to make this into some sort of interrogatory,
No.
then let me answer the question. Sorry, I was being mildly unfair to you.
I want to make sure the question was.
No, I supported it before because we were in a real emergency situation where nobody knew what was happening with anything. This was being done around about. We got some problems with the county commission that they wanted to keep it open. Then we had overflowing all over the island, as we discussed. Then we had to raise the fees because people were just about parking people's gardens and leaving $50, on the windshield wiper and saying, thanks so much for the excellent parking. This is technically cheaper than the public parking anyway. To no appreciable result. But I accepted that at the time because we were faced with a novel and new situation. Now that we are revisiting it again, and all the attendance problems are reported by staff in the police department, now that we are revisiting again, we've got to look at it sober and with an eye to our previous experiences. Will this 2 days for the weekend make any actual difference except to torment people who come to stay here and or make people feel better, while the very people that we're trying to stop are going to be going around the island, who are just flying in or driving in for the weekend and staying, and it seems to be on the order of thousands, quite frankly, for the occupancy numbers. They are going to be the ones who are in the restaurants ostensibly spreading the COVID. I just want to make sure that we're getting the net benefit there's got the cost benefit analysis. And I just want it said, so if it turns out that way, well, at least we reflected upon it and we discounted the concern, but it has to be said from the other side.
I think that my concern, what is the benefit, is that with the East Coast beaches being closed, with the restrictions being put in some of the municipalities around us, that I'm extremely concerned about we're already past whatever carrying capacity is on our beaches. The hotels are going to be filled, the beaches are going to be filled, the vacation rentals are going to be filled. There's a huge impact on our natural resources. And that's really what my concern is as well. So to me, closing the paid lots similarly to the East Coast, is probably going to be a benefit to our environment. And it is limiting probably a much more increased interaction on our beaches with individuals that, although it's already going to be very heavy on our beach, if you look at some of the pictures that we've seen all over, there's not a lot of places for these tents to go. So that will limit the amount of impact to individuals, 6-foot distancing, as well as the natural resources. I mean, we've all read that there's concern about, we've got nesting season right now. I see the tents right up to the nests. SCCF has had some concerns on the impacts. There's been digging around the nests. I have concerns about that. So I'm looking at both of those, Jason, and saying this short window of 3 or 4 days that a whole other coast is looking at right now would probably be a benefit to our island community. And our citizens have spoken to that as well. So that's why I'm looking at it. It's not an easy decision. I don't like that we might have to make this decision. But that's where I'm coming from.
No, and I appreciate and understand that. And there's, however, the environmental issue has never been brought up to my remembrances when it came to closing beach parking, nor have we ever done that before, nor has anybody ever suggested. And while that would be a nice way for me to justify it, I consider that to be a red herring, because then we could be